So continuing with the autonomic nervous system, we need now to talk about receptors, which you did have to learn in Bio 201. You had to learn some of them anyway, and we may make you learn a few more now. Adrenergic receptors, remember, these are for the sympathetic nervous system. These are what you need when the chupacabra comes. There you see the chupacabra. Chupacabra, the goat sucker, right? You guys know? There's an actual dead chupacabra. All right. So let's talk about adrenergic receptors. There are different flavors, you can think of it, of adrenergic receptors, which have their own unique locations and effects. So alpha 1s, there are two basic categories, alpha and beta. All right, alpha 1 receptors. Alpha 1 receptors are found in peripheral blood vessels, and they most sympathetic organs. All right, so what happens is when the sympathetic nervous system kicks in, all right, remember the adrenal gland releases epinephrine and norepinephrine into the blood, and blood goes everywhere in your body. So in your blood vessels, the alpha 1 receptors will be responding to epinephrine and norepinephrine. And what do? They vasoconstrict, all right? So that's going to increase blood pressure. That's the whole point. You want blood to get to your organs faster. You're fighting the chupacabra. You need more blood to your heart, to your muscles, and so on. Alpha 1 receptors are actually found in lots of places in the body. I'm not going to make you learn anywhere near all of them because I don't remember all of them. But there are two others I want you to know that are important for our purposes. They also inhibit urination, and they dilate pupils. Notice those are both sympathetic effects. You don't need to pee right now. In fact, you want to save fluid because you need it to perspire. So the sympathetic nervous system inhibits urination. It will also dilate pupils so that you can see better, all right? So those are the three effects that I want you to know for alpha 1 receptors. I will quiz you on these. They'll be on your quizzes and on your exams. You must know these three effects for alpha 1 receptors. Peripheral vasoconstriction, which increases blood pressure. They inhibit urination, and they dilate your pupils. Alpha 2 receptors, these are found in the pancreas platelets, plus many, many other places in the body. These are the only two that I'm going to require you to know, all right? They inhibit insulin secretion by the pancreas. Now, insulin decreases blood glucose, so the effect, therefore, is to increase blood glucose. We want there to be plenty of glucose available in the blood so that your heart and your skeletal muscles can use it, all right? So we want to promote blood glucose. We inhibit, therefore, insulin, which would cause a lot of blood glucose to get taken up by your intestines and other organs that don't need it right now, all right? The other thing that alpha 2 receptors do is they promote blood clotting. Now, sorry, got the Rona. Why would we want to promote blood clotting? Well, think about it. You're fighting the chupacabra, all right? What if you get scratched or bitten? Well, you don't want to bleed out. So they promote blood clotting. It makes sense, okay? So those are the effects that I want you to know for alpha 2 receptors. They increase blood glucose by inhibiting insulin, and they also promote blood clotting, all right? By the way, that funny symbol, that's the Greek letter alpha, all right? Sometimes I use the funny symbol, sometimes I spell it out in normal Roman alphabet. You got to know it both ways. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about beta receptors, specifically first beta 1. Beta 1 receptors are found in the heart and kidneys. In the heart, they increase heart rate, they increase blood pressure, which increases blood pressure. They also increase contractility of the heart muscle. They increase something we're going to be talking about in just a week's time called stroke volume. Stroke volume means how much blood your heart pumps out with every beat. So what they do is they make your heart beat more forcefully. Think of a sponge. Think of a sponge that's damp. If you squeeze a damp sponge, a little bit of water will come out. Now think of a sponge that's really soaked in water, and you squeeze it really hard. What's going to happen now? A lot of water is going to come out. That's contractility, squeezing it really hard so more blood comes out, in this case for your heart. So beta 1 receptors in the heart, they do two things. They increase heart rate, which increases blood pressure. We're going to see it. Anytime you increase heart rate, you automatically have to increase blood pressure. That's just physics. And they also increase contractility. And once again, they do that so that we increase the stroke volume. And once again, just by physics, if you increase stroke volume, you will increase the blood pressure. So make sure you know what they do in the heart. Then, in the kidneys, they cause the release of a hormone called renin. And we are going to learn this semester, actually for your first exam you'll need to know it, you'll need to know it for your third exam, you'll need to know it for your fourth exam, and you'll need to know it for the final exam. So of the 5 exams we have this semester, the only one you don't have to know it for is the second exam. It's called the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. The nursing school has told us that this is the single most important topic of all of Bio 2. So I hit it with a sledgehammer. I test you on it on 4 exams, and you'll get tested on it on several quizzes. So just get ready for that. Renin. And what it does is it increases blood pressure. The renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, the RAAS, increases blood pressure. Okay, beta-2 receptors. These are found in the lungs and in the deep blood vessels. Those are the 2 places. In the lungs, they relax the smooth muscle, producing bronchodilation. What does that do? That increases oxygen flow. Remember, the sympathetic, you're in crisis mode. You're fighting a chupacabra. You're running from la mano peluda. So you need lots of ATP. What do you make ATP from? Glucose and oxygen. So here we're getting more oxygen to your body by bronchodilating. They also vasodilate arteries to liver and to skeletal muscles. Now, you should probably have learned in Bio 201 about myoglobin. Myoglobin is the way that you store oxygen in skeletal muscle, all right? So remember, hemoglobin is how you store oxygen in the blood. I mean, you probably have heard that at least. Myoglobin stores oxygen in the muscle. So notice what the beta-2s do. They increase oxygen and they increase glucose. How about that? They're getting you more raw materials to make ATP, all right? They promote processes called glycogenolysis, gluconeogenesis, and lipolysis. Now, you don't have to know those for your first exam, but you will have to know those for your third, fourth, and final exams. So I'm going to start talking about them now. I'm going to keep reminding you about them all the way through the semester. Glycogenolysis means you break down glycogen and turn it into glucose. That raises blood glucose. Gluconeogenesis, glucose, neo, new, genesis, create. Gluconeogenesis means you actually create glucose out of amino acids and out of lipids. You can take proteins and fats and turn them into glucose. And lipolysis means breaking down fats, and you break down fats so that you have the raw materials for the gluconeogenesis. You will have to know these terms, so I'm introducing them now. I'm going to keep talking about them as often as I can to remind you, all right? And then the beta-3 receptors, these are found in adipose tissue. So what do? They break down fat in order to get the raw materials for gluconeogenesis. So bottom line is ultimately, therefore, they increase blood glucose. So look overall at the betas, all right? What do the betas do in general? So the beta-1s increase heart rate and blood pressure and stroke volume and so on. That's all about getting more blood to your body. And look at the beta-2s and beta-3s. Those are all about getting more oxygen and glucose to your body, okay? So let's finish all this up by seeing if you know anything here. How about that? Suppose a drug is a non-selective beta receptor antagonist. That means it works on all 3 beta receptors. What effect would this drug have? Would it increase the heart rate? Would it decrease the heart rate? Would it do bronchodilation? Would it do bronchoconstriction? Or would it do both B and D? Pause the video, figure it out, come back when you're ready. It would be both B and D. Notice it says it's an antagonist, so that means it blocks all beta receptors. What happens if you block beta-1s? Well, that would be B, you decrease heart rate. What happens if you block beta-2s? You're going to bronchoconstrict, okay? These are the questions you can expect to see on your quizzes and exams. This is how well you have to know your beta and alpha receptors and, in general, the whole adrenergic, cholinergic, and all of that, okay? So suppose a drug is a selective beta-1 receptor antagonist. So this time it's a selective beta-1 only. What effect would this drug have? Increase heart rate, decrease heart rate, bronchodilation, bronchoconstriction, or both B and D? Once again, pause the video, figure it out, then come back. Okay, here we go. It would decrease heart rate. It's only working on beta-1s. Beta-1s are heart. All right, it's not going to have any effect on lung because those are beta-2 receptors. All right, see how this works? Suppose a drug is a selective beta-2 receptor agonist. What effect would this drug have? Increase heart rate, decrease heart rate, bronchodilation, bronchoconstriction, or both B and D? Pause the video, come back when you're ready. All right, here we go. It's a beta-2 receptor agonist. That means it activates beta-2 receptors. And what do beta-2 receptors do? Well, one of the things they do is they bronchodilate. Okay? So there you go. So isoproterenol, a non-selective beta receptor agonist, was developed in 1940. So that was, not that long ago. In terms of the history of science, this was not very long ago at all. I mean, my parents were already in high school when they developed the first non-selective beta receptor agonist. And think about that. Think about it. It's a non-selective agonist, so it was actually doing all kinds of things. All right. Alpha and beta receptors, by the way, were not discovered until 1948. So they had drugs that worked on them, but they didn't really know exactly what was happening until a few years later. Propranolol, the first non-selective beta blocker, was developed in 1964. I was in high school when the first non-selective beta blocker was developed. Now, think about this. It's a non-selective beta blocker, so what was it doing? What do you suppose it was prescribed for? It was prescribed for high blood pressure, all right, because by blocking beta-1s, it decreased heart rate and contractility, which lowered blood pressure. But notice it also blocked beta-2s. So what did that do? Made it harder for people to breathe and lowered their blood sugar. So those poor people who had to take these early drugs like that, I mean, they were getting part of the effect they wanted, but they were also getting side effects that were not really desired at all. Atenolol, the first selective beta-1 blocker, developed not until 1976. I was already married at that point. I was well out of college. So, and that's what is normally, that type of drug is what prescribed now for people with high blood pressure. You want a selective beta-1. You don't want to mess with the beta-2s and the beta-3s. You want to only go for the beta-1s only to reduce the blood pressure. Okay? So that takes care of all that you were supposed to. This was basically a little bit new and a little bit review. Most of the ANS stuff should have been review. The fluids and solids would have been new. You need to know all of this. Remember, you have a homework assignment on this PowerPoint. You're going to have also the biggest quiz of the semester on it, a 20-point quiz. Make sure you know all of this. And I really mean all of it. I mean every single damn bit of it. All the ions, all the fluids, all the receptors, all the neurotransmitters. You absolutely have to know all of this, okay? And again, why? Why am I torturing you this way? Because this will never go away for the entire semester. When we talk about the respiratory system, the cardiovascular system, the urinary system, acid-base balance, and so on, we will be using these terms constantly, okay? So, and in order to reward myself for going through this, I'm going to now look at slides of my summer adventures. You don't have to, obviously. That's the Grand Canyon. That's one of the places I go, a very remote part. Again, that's Toro Weep, the Grand Canyon. Not many people go there. This is where, during the summer, it's so hot. When the rain comes down, the bottom of the canyon is like 120 degrees, and the rain is cold, so it makes clouds inside the canyon, and they raise up to the top. It's so awesome to see that. Here's Grand Canyon again. Grand Canyon is such an amazing place. I spend 2 weeks at the Grand Canyon camping there every year, and I don't go to the parts of the Grand Canyon other people can see. Here's Lee's Ferry. This is what's called the Spencer Trail. You're looking at about the first 20 miles of the Grand Canyon there in the distance. This is a place called, I'm standing at Dead Horse Point, looking down at a bend in the Colorado River. This is the Green River, actually. Just gorgeous. It's not only the Colorado River that made all the canyons. Other rivers in Colorado Plateau made them as well. There's my girl Hannah. She went with me one year. We had a great time. She's swimming in the Green River. Here are the goosenecks of the San Juan River. There's Monument Valley, the Navajo Nation's tribal monument in the distance. You can see a little bit of the San Juan River there in the lower left. I come here every year. There's a way to hike down to the river, which I do every year. Go for a swim. There's the river again. There are the goosenecks, they're called. They're cut by the river again. Water, most powerful force on earth. Slot canyons, cut by water. Sometimes the people die in flash floods in slot canyons. I heard people say, well, why don't they just climb out? Can you see why now? Here's a slot canyon. Some of them are pretty damn narrow. This one you have to stand sideways to get through, and you can't wear your backpack. You have to take it off. This is called spooky because it gets to be like 50 feet deep. So it's completely pitch black inside. You just keep moving, hope there's nothing there. There's Hannah. I taught her how to do stemming in order to get over some of the potholes, some of the water in the slot canyons. She was freaked out. She'd never done this before. She's going, Tom! There's Hannah with her little baggie of weed. She was from Colorado. She had a card. It was legal for her. Here, there's somebody who went off the side of the road in the Canyonlands. Not a good idea. There's the road they went off. You can see there are a bunch of rocks piled there. The road is actually very narrow. What you can't see is just in the foreground, out of view, there is the side of a cliff. So you can't go any further to that side because you'd run into the cliff. So you have to be right on the edge. And what happens is sometimes you try to go over rocks like that, your back wheel will spin out. And that's what happened to this guy. His back wheels spun out and he went down the side. He lived, as I found out, but he was in pretty bad shape. There's Hannah at the end of the trip. We had a great time. And there, water, all right? Water, yeah, it's can cause trouble. It took me a while to get out of that. There you go, Grand Canyon. This is where my soul lives. I spend 2 weeks here every year. Can't imagine not doing this. Okay, folks, that's it.